Shalom again, everybody, and welcome to Toward a More Jewish Jesus, the Interfaithfulness podcast. And I'm here at Interfaithfulness Plaza with my associate, Steve Lamb. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Stuart. How are you?
I'm okay.
Good.
Today I wanted to let people in on something that I do periodically, and that is I go to speak to various groups about the things that we stand for. And sometimes I go to churches. And recently I've been doing a series of addresses at a church here in California. And today I thought I'd give you part of a summary of some of the points I made in that church when I was talking to them about the fact that the church is not really the place where spiritual identity and spiritual life is shaped. That sounds like heresy, I realize. But the church is not the place. Churches serve a purpose, but the place where spiritual identity is really shaped is in the home. And I want to demonstrate it to you with some quotations from an American sociologist. Steve, I'll ask you to read this. Tell us about the sociologist, and read the first of the two paragraphs I have here.
Okay.
Please.
Robert Wuthnow is an American sociologist who is widely known for his work in the sociology of religion. He is the Gerhard A. Adlinger Professor of Sociology at Princeton University, where he is also the chair of the Department of Sociology, wow, and director of the Princeton University Center for the Study of Religion. So he's a big guy.
Right.
And here are the two quotations from his book, Growing Up Religious. And what do we take away from hearing these? Here's the first one. Effective religious socialization comes about through embedded practices, that is, through specific, deliberate religious activities that are firmly intertwined with the daily habits of family routines, of eating and sleeping, of having conversations, of adorning the spaces in which people live, or celebrating the holidays, and being part of a community. Combined with these practices, compared with these practices, the formal teachings of religious leaders pale in significance. Yet when such practices are present, formal teachings also become more important.
That's pretty high-level language, but what he's saying is that where people are shaped spiritually is in the home. This book, Growing Up Religious, sought to interview Protestants, Catholics, and Jews, and to find out why these people, during their lives, even if they had wandered away from religious commitments, what brought them back? What is the gravity that keeps them moored in some kind of a spiritual identity? And he said, it's the patterns of embedded practices, the things that you do week in, week out, at certain times of the year, at certain times of the week, the things you eat, the rituals that are done. You know, for example, let me give you an example. I cannot eat mushroom barley soup without thinking of Shabbat.
Okay.
Now, this is perhaps a trivial illustration for some of you, but why is that? Because when I was a young man, when I was a child, every Shabbat I spent with my Orthodox Jewish grandmother and my cousins in Borough Park, which is a religious Jewish location in New York, and frequently my grandmother would feed me mushroom barley soup with rye bread, thank you. And
yummy.
now, to this day, many years later, whenever I eat that soup, I think of Shabbat. It's that association, these patterns of embedded practices, establish all kinds of associations which shape our identity. And it's not what happens in church or synagogue for 2 hours on a Saturday or a Sunday. Although that may be important, that's not what shapes you. What shapes you is what happens the other 166 hours of the week. You got anything to say before we keep going?
Well, it's sort of like, you know, the post-Thanksgiving turkey sandwich.
Yeah, it reminds you of Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving of your family,
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. That's interesting. Read the next paragraph. It's also from Wuthnow, please.
It is evident, however, that religion, like charity, begins at home. The daily round of family activities must somehow be brought into the presence of God.
Here we have
Well, here we have the presence of the state.
This reminds me of another routine. When I was in the 7th grade, I had a French teacher. No, actually, would have been, yeah, maybe 9th grade. And she was a religious Roman Catholic. She would go every summer to Lourdes to help with the invalids there. This is in a public school. Her name was Gertrude Hansberry. I still remember her name. And whenever an ambulance would come by, in a public school, she'd say, "Children, let's have a moment of silence for the people in that ambulance."
Wow.
That's what she would do.
Probably illegal today. Anyway.
Oh, no doubt. But that was I can't. Whenever I hear a siren, I think of Gertrude Hansberry, because and the connection she made between that and praying. So it's another illustration of just what you're talking about. Which please go back and read, pick up some context, and
Okay.
maybe read the paragraph again, and we'll go on.
Okay. It is evident, however, that religion, like charity, begins at home. The daily round of family activities must somehow be brought into the presence of God. Parents praying, families eating together, families focusing on what is proper and improper, and sacred artifacts are all important ways in which family space is sacralized. They come together, forming an almost imperceptible mirage of experience.
Right. So, talking about family space as being sacralized, as being made holy. And that really brings us into the Jewish world. There's a verse in Ezekiel, the prophet, which speaks about the Jewish people in exile, and it says that God, for a while, made a mikdash ma'at in the diaspora. A mikdash ma'at means a little sanctuary. But Jewish tradition says that little sanctuary, where God is honored, is the home. And I really do believe that the home is, in a sense, the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies was that place in the midst of Israel. There goes another siren. We're right near a fire department, folks. That's what this is. The Holy of Holies was the place in the temple where the holiness of God was most deeply concentrated, and it radiated out to the rest of the world. Similarly, the home is like the Holy of Holies. And I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and they said, we've got it wrong. We tend to treat the home as the place where you can let it all hang out, and you can let all of your aspirations to holiness and godliness and all that, just let it go.
Yeah.
But really, the home should be the place where it really lives. So let's look at some of the points that I made in this sermon that I gave to a fine group of Christians who really appreciate Jewish life, but I had some lessons for them. Would you please read my bullet points? Number one, please.
Number one, we have learned today that the home is the Holy of Holies of Jewish life and also the life of Yeshua believers from among the other nations, that is, the Gentiles.
That's right. The home is the Holy of Holies. If it doesn't happen here, it doesn't happen. You can take your kids to a church on Sunday or to a synagogue, and then they come home, and if it's business as usual, if there's nothing about the life in the home that articulates a certain spiritual orientation towards life, then what do you got?
I grew up at a very prosperous Protestant church in Pasadena, the 3 Ps there. And
Right.
But there were friends of mine who, although they went to church and Sunday school and every other event we had during the week, at home, their parents lived like any other people of their socio-income
Right.
group. And those kids today have no identity as believers at all.
It's sad, but it's true. In Jewish life, there's an interesting thing I read. There's a Jewish educator who says that don't have your children light the Shabbat candles. Let the mother light the Shabbat candles, not the children. And the reason he says for this is that if you have your children do it, you're teaching them that when they become parents, that their children will light the Shabbat candles, and that really Jewish religious practice is really for the children. It's important for the adults to do it, so the kids recognize this is something you do as an adult. I was speaking to a man not long ago, in which I talked about our responsibilities to share our faith with the wider world. And he said to me, he says, well, we concentrate on really shaping our children. I said, but by your example, what you're doing is you're telling your children that when they become daddies and mommies, that they don't really have to be concerned with sharing their faith with the wider world. They just need to concentrate on their children. So my point is, and your point, is that children imitate the behavior of their parents. And that happens in the home. And the home is the Holy of Holies. Do me a favor, read the second bullet point there.
Okay. We've learned that the home is the little sanctuary where the presence of God is to be sought, honored, and cultivated, and yes, experienced. God is to be worshipped there and also experienced there.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now that's pretty top shelf for a lot of people. But imagine what happens for children if they see that their parents pray regularly, that the family prays about various things, and that on occasion there are answers to prayer. There are people whose lives turn around. There are situations that change. Even there are people who are healed in answer to prayer. If this happens in the home, I mean, it's unforgettable.
It's really interesting. My best friend in the world died this year.
I'm sorry.
And, I used to just call Mike up and pray with him about anything and everything. And for months, I had no one to call and pray with. And I suddenly realized, hey, I was married to someone who I could call.
Right.
And actually, honestly, for years, I didn't pray with my wife over stuff because I prayed with Mike over stuff.
Right.
Which was probably really wrong. Just to hint everybody. And I'm really sorry my friend is dead, but it's tremendously improved my relationship with my wife that I pray with her now about everything that I used to pray with Mike about.
Yes, and it makes a big difference in the home and in the marriage.
Yeah.
Look, we're going to talk about something here called kavod. I'll explain about it after Steve reads the next bullet point, the third bullet point, please.
Okay. We have learned that ritual is an important means of sensitizing us how and why to honor God, to give him kavod, the honor and respect he is due.
Right, ritual. Ritual are patterns of repeated behavior that have meaning attached to them in some way. They're holy habits, in a sense. Rituals are holy habits, habitual behaviors. And a ritual is a way of elevating our awareness. For example, on Shabbat, we light these candles at the beginning of Shabbat. What's the purpose of that? Part of the purpose of it is it reminds us we're entering a special time right now. This is different from the rest of the week. The candles have certain meaning. There are two candles, for example. They symbolize the two verbs that are used about Shabbat in the two versions of the Ten Commandments found in the Torah, in Exodus and in Deuteronomy. In one, we hear the word that we're supposed to remember the Shabbat, and in the other, we're told we're supposed to keep it. Remember it and keep it, or remember it and guard it. Shemora and Zachor. So those two candles symbolize our responsibility to Shabbat. But let's forget about what they symbolize in terms of that content. By simply having the candles there on Friday night, it tells us, okay, folks, special time. And when we bless the wine, we have kiddush before the meal. That's also something you do in Jewish life at special times. But the rituals make the reality palpable. It goes from being an idea to being something that you see, you taste, you enter into. So rituals are important.
This doesn't happen as much anymore, but in the building trades until the mid-1970s, there were rituals that actually occurred when you laid a foundation. You laid a foundation with a ritual, and there's something called the topping off ritual. When your roof was completed, when your roof framing was completed, there was a ritual that you traditionally, until the mid-1970s, practiced.
The builders did, or the homeowners did?
The builders did.
Wow, isn't
Yeah.
that interesting?
Yeah, and that went away with kind of the hippieization, and but it used to be that there were very specific rituals that people just in the trades did, and that you knew that the building had started at this time. You knew that the structure was structurally complete at this other time. And then there used to be also a ritual where the homeowners would come in and take possession of the house, and that's gone too. But
We Jews still have a ritual. We hang mezuzot on the doors when the house is built. It establishes a sense of sacred space,
Right.
because it's to remind us of these words I command you this day shall be in your heart. You should teach them diligently to children. You shall speak of them when you are in your house and when you walk by the way. So the mezuzot, these boxes that have certain scripture passages in them that are on the doorposts, remind us that the house is holy space, and that we're to remember that holiness as we go out. And what I'll probably say later in this lesson is I love that the scripture talks about the Lord shall preserve your going out and your coming in. Now, you're going out and you're coming in from what?
from your house.
That's right. From the Jewish point of view, home base, the home is home base. It's where the holiness lives and breathes, and the Lord will preserve you as you go out and as you come in. That's just very interesting. Let's learn a little bit more about kavod, which means proper honor and respect. The fourth bullet point, the long one, please.
We have learned that our faith teaches us that all of life involves learning to distribute appropriate kavod, to give honor to whom honor is due, for husbands to love their wives, for wives to see that they respect their husbands, for children to honor their parents, for parents to honor their children. For as the prophet Malachi reminds us, the Elijah prophet, and by implication the Messiah, come to turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers.
One of the big things that's supposed to happen religiously in the home is, and there are rituals that in Jewish life that embody this, is for fathers to show proper respect for their children, children to show proper respect for their parents, for husbands to show proper respect for their wives, for wives to show proper respect for their husbands. Because that respect, that proper honor, is the foundation, really, of our behavior in the outside world. If you have somebody who despised his mother and father, had no respect for them, you really can't expect them to have very good relationships outside. The home is the foundation. At the Shabbat table, interestingly, every week we will bless our children, say to the male children, Yisimcha Elokim Ephraim Manasseh, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. To the daughters we'll say, Yisimech Elokim Kasara Rivka Rachel V'Leah, may God make you like Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. At this point, we're honoring our ancestors, but we're also blessing the children. And the parents are honoring the children. They're showing respect for them. They are relating to them in a very positive way. And then the husband of the house will read or chant Proverbs 31, the old woman of valor who can find. Not all of the chapter, but about half of the chapter is chanted every week in order to show honor to the mother. And then we honor Shabbat. We honor God for giving us Shabbat. The whole Shabbat meal is all about honoring God for this, honoring God for that, honoring each other for these things. That's what holiness is. Holiness, as a friend of mine summarized what I've been teaching about this, he says it's about family and honor. And holiness is very much rooted in that.
I have a friend who's a divorced Jewish woman.
Yes.
And I asked her one day, I said, what is the thing that you miss most about being married?
Wow.
And she said to me, she's actually started to tear up when she responded to me. She says, I miss my husband singing to me at Shabbat.
Oh.
And, that just blew me away because I thought there'd be 50 other possible answers, right? But
what a poignant statement.
Yeah.
That really says it all. And Judaism can be understood as an ornate system of distributing kavod, of showing, and Paul picks up on this, the New Testament picks up on it, Peter does. Show honor to whom honor is due. Even honor the emperor. Honor the emperor. The emperor
Of
is
all
a
people.
pagan.
Yeah.
The emperor is a pagan who is our enemy, but he is the emperor. You show proper respect where respect is due. It says in the Torah that you shall stand before the gray-haired man and you shall fear the Lord your God. The idea is that if you can show honor to the older people, you're showing disrespect for God. It says in the scriptures, husbands, treat your wives with honor or your prayers will be hindered. The idea is that God expects us to honor our spouses. And if we don't expect God to answer your prayers if you can't show respect for your wife. So all of this is huge. And the home is the center of holiness of life. Let's read another bullet point, please.
We have learned as well that we must not become ingrown, that the home is meant to be a place from which we go out and to which we come in, that we are to live out in the outside world the transformation and holiness we cultivate in the home.
That doesn't say it all, but it says a lot. And it's really part of the foundation of some of the things we want to do in interfaithfulness. And you'll hear more about this as time goes on, folks. But we have an initiative that is central to our identity, which involves of the home and the sacredness of the home, because that's where it all happens or it doesn't. So for all of you, may the Lord preserve your going out and your coming in. And I want you to remember this, that everything gets better when people get together around a more Jewish Jesus. Thank you very much. We'll see you again. Shalom for now.
You may support our work at Toward a More Jewish Jesus by sending your tax-deductible contributions to Interfaithfulness, P.O. Box 6137, Altadena, California 91003, 6137. That's Interfaithfulness, P.O. Box 6137, Altadena, California 91003-6137. Please make out your checks to Interfaithfulness. If you prefer donating on the web, please visit us at www.interfaithfulness.org and look for the donate button in the lower right corner of the page. We invite you to follow us too at our Interfaithfulness Facebook page. Thanks for joining us today at Interfaithfulness, where everything changes for the better when we move toward a more Jewish Jesus.